Since Bank of Canada's last rate hike announcement and conditional pause, a lot of real estate bulls have come out and predicting that this is going to be the bottom of the market, and from here the market will likely to shoot up. While I have some reservations about this strategy and I'm going to share this video for you, plus Federal Reserve also announced their rate hike and they haven't mentioned anything about any pause, which means they will continue to raise rates, and then this will have some pressure on Bank of Canada to maintain the interest rate differential, which will likely put some pressure on the Canadian currency. Plus, we also look at the latest GTS stats from the Toronto Real Estate Board with regards to the real estate market in the month of January. We'll look at it, how the market is performing, plus some GDP forecast for the next 2 quarters, what's going to happen in the economy, how this will impact you and your financials. So if you're new to my channel, my name is Yasin Nizami and I make these videos to educate my audience about the real estate market in Canada, particularly in the GTA, as well as some investment strategies, some macroeconomics, some geopolitical situation that may or may not impact your financial position. So if you are interested in any of these topics, consider subscribe, because that's the only way to support this channel, because nobody is sponsoring this video. So it's just me and my time and effort, and I will get motivation from you liking it, sharing it, and subscribing this channel. And let's get into today's topic. So today's topic is Federal Reserve raised their interest rate last week by 25 basis points, but they have not mentioned anything about the rate pause. And the reason is they're not sure that their job is done, because they're looking at the inflation, they're looking at the GDP data, they're looking at the unemployment rate. And last week, the unemployment rate went historic low. Like, we haven't seen that low unemployment in the US since 1969. So that data itself is going to give a lot of reasons why Federal Reserve should continue rate hikes in the future. So this is going to be very interesting for Canada, because there is a thing called interest rate differential, which means the difference between the overnight rate, from one country to the US Federal Reserve. And if the differential is getting bigger, which will put some pressure on the local currency against US dollar. So it's going to be very interesting how Bank of Canada is going to take that and put this into consideration for their next rate hike decision. Now, one thing is very sure, that the Canadian economy is very different from US, and the mortgage industry is also very different from US. In the US, we typically see a 30-year mortgage fixed for a lot of buyers, versus here we can only go up to 5 years if somebody wants to take a fixed rate mortgage. So there's a lot of differences, but I think there are so many cross currents as well, which Bank of Canada has to take into consideration for their next rate hike decisions. Now, the data came from Toronto Real Estate Board, which shows that the market has entered into deep freeze with regards to sales. Sales has been historic down. So let's just look at the stats from TRAP, and we start from the residential statistics and just look at the amount of transaction that has gone down. So now this is comparing year over year, which means looking at the data from January 2022 and comparing it with January 2021. Keep in mind, the market has peaked in 2022 in February and January. February and January was the peak month where the market was running so crazy. So of course, the base effect is here, and this is going to skew up the year over year numbers. So comparing these two time of the year, we are seeing 44.6% decline in the sales volume. And if you look at the month over month seasonally adjusted, which is 1% lower sales than December. Now, just looking at the average selling price, that has gone down 16.4%. Again, this is year over year. Last January was crazy, and since then we are already seeing the market is kind of declining, on a windfall type of environment. So 16.4 is not a shocker, because we're comparing to the peak month of last year. But if you look at the seasonally adjusted, the price is still going downwards 3% compared to December last month. And if you look at the listings, again, listings hasn't there is no such big difference in terms of the listing year over year. But if you look at the SLNR, which means it shows how much of the new inventory is being absorbed in a month. So when we look at the SLNR in the month of January 2022, it was 70%, which shows the demand of the housing in that time of the year was so huge that 70% of new listings were being absorbed in a month. Compared to this time, it is only 40%, which means the demand has been completely 50% reduced compared to last year. Even though we don't have enough inventory, but the demand is also significantly low. So 40% SNLR we recorded in the month of January. Now, days on the market, again, this is also a very good indication, how much time a property is taking in order to be sold in the market. Last year, this time, it was 18 days. Now it's taking 41 days, almost 130% longer than it used to take last year. And then if you look at the condominium sales, and this is also, again, no surprise, 54% down year over year. But look at the average selling price. So condo has been bottomed in terms of the price movement here. When we look at the quarter to quarter comparative, the price hasn't moved yet, right? So that shows the condo market is kind of hitting the bottom here. And maybe this is a good time to enter into the condo market from an investment perspective. Now look at the listings here, 14.3% down compared to the last quarter year over year. And the SLNR, again, similar stats here, 48% down compared to 89%. Like last year, 89% of the new listings were being absorbed by the buyers in the market. Now it's almost, half. And again, days of the market, similar story as single family homes. And then if you look at the rental stats, now we have been reading about this, we have been hearing about this. The rental has been so hot that it is going all-time high. And the reason is not enough inventory and more demand. All these new immigrants are going to rent the property for their living, for their shelter, which will continue to put a lot of price pressure in the rental market. So you have 19.9% listing reduction. Okay, sorry, the transaction reduction. So less listing means less transactions happening, but the rent has gone up 19% year over year. Okay, the new listing 11.8% down. So that tells you the overall picture of the GTA market, where the listing is low, but again the demand is also halved, compared to last year. So if the listing goes up, which will likely to go up in the spring market, and the demand stays the same, this will put downward price pressure going forward. And since the Bank of Canada's latest rate hike and the conditional pause announcement, a lot of bulls are predicting that this is the bottom, and from here it's going to go up. I don't think this is a straightforward decision here because there's so many cross currents. We are seeing the GDPs being declining. Economists are forecasting that the Q4 GDP is going to be 1.6%, which is basically trending downwards, and we will see further declines in the next 2 quarters, which means less economic activity, more job losses. If you don't have a job, you cannot afford mortgage for sure, right? So there'll be less and less people, inclined towards buying their houses when there is a lot of uncertainty about their jobs and careers and the economic activity. There is another news that a lot of Ontarians are actually moving out of province. And no surprise here, the living expense has been so higher here. People are looking for similar amount of jobs that they're doing here, but trying to minimize their living expense by moving out of the province. So this is happening, guys. Like there's a lot of cross currents here. Yes, we have some new immigrants coming in, but the existing people are also moving out of the province in order to find better, living expense so that they can have some better quality of life. So all of this happening, Bank of Canada's decision might be under pressure because the Federal Reserve is not, increasing. The Federal Reserve is not taking a pause here. So which means the interest rate differential will put more pressure on the loonie. Bank of Canada has to protect the loonie in order to, keep supporting the economy. So I'm not convinced that this is the bottom yet. I think we will still see more downward price pressure here, because especially as the inventory starts going up, which will likely to happen in the spring market, keep my words. This is the test. This is the test of the market. We will see that, how the market behaves when the inventory starts going up and the demand is still there. And the rates are, even if they pause here, the rates are not cheap. Like variable is, over 6%. The fixed is just, touching 5%. So at this rate, it's pretty hard to qualify for $1 million property, and it's pretty hard to afford the monthly payment on that property, right? So this is really, really important to look at it, and we'll see, how things will evolve in the next couple of months. But this is what I can share with you, and let me know what you think. What is your opinion about the market? What do you think? What's happening in your neighborhood? Where do you think the economy is moving? Which direction? Is it going to further decline? We will see more job losses or not. So let me know what you think. Put your comments down below, and I'll see you in my next week video. Take care.